Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it's just Marco here once again, and I am already regretting that I didn't bring water up here to record because I hate that whenever I do these videos and then my voice starts sounding rough because I don't have my water next to me like I usually do. But anyways, I thought that I should get this video over with because I don't want to still be thinking about this movie for a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. I just want to get this video over with. And I thought that I should just take advantage and do it and be done with it. Because when I did that review yesterday, it was a very general review. Very general. And Safi, the problem with Safi is that, excuse me, sorry. Safi likes to rush through things. And because she's not capable of really having those discussions, so she likes to rush through things and just be like, yeah, it was bad, let's move on. And she even said that today. And honestly, I think that there's still a lot to say about this movie. And what was weird, it was very weird because when I first watched it, I just hated the experience. It was so grueling watching that. I could really feel the runtime of watching this 3 hour, boring fan fiction noir wannabe Batman movie. Uh, but then yesterday, when we did, oh wait, today, sorry, uh, these days kind of blend together sometimes when we just focus on doing videos all day. Today, I haven't really been, but I've been thinking in terms of this movie that not really about this movie, but how I really wanted to watch Monk again, and I wanted to watch Dirty Harry and maybe Seven and other things like that because after I watched this movie yesterday and today, all I could think about was how similar it was to those movies and the show and how similar and how it was see, that's a bad thing when you make a movie that is more similar to other movies than to movies in the actual series. It's basically similar but different to the Halloween movies. Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills. Those movies feel extremely similar to the sequels in the series because they basically ripped them off. They just copied and pasted all the best things that they wanted to use to please the fanboys. Well, this movie feels like they copied and pasted from non Batman things. And to me, I just want to watch those things now. Those things are so much better. You could even do a video just pitting those things up against this and just explaining how every single element of those films are all of them, they're better than this crap. But I just really wanted to talk about the similarities that I saw and just the spoilers because there are so many spoiler specific things that I really did not like about this movie. And I feel like I should explain them to make sure that people can really understand how bad this movie really was. I mean, to be honest, my excitement for this movie, it was a 7 out of 10. I was still excited, even with all the bad casting, even with Twilight Boy playing Batman, even with the Zodiac Killer Riddler costume. I was still excited. And I was still thinking, hey, maybe this movie will be pretty damn good. And then I watched it, and immediately I knew it was going to suck. Immediately. Like, literally, right off the bat. And that just shows how bad the movie really is. The fact that it it immediately gives you that feeling that this is not the movie that that you really want it to be. It's not the Batman movie that you really want it to be either. It's just this very poor, amateur, bland, boring, stuffy, dry noir fan fiction affair, and it's really bad. Like it's really, really bad. I mean, ugh, there's just I'm gonna get into it. You know what? I'm gonna destroy this movie. Uh, I did destroy it already with Safi, but I want to destroy it again just for good measure. Just I knocked it out already, but now I'm gonna step on its corpse and stomp it to death. I don't know, overkill. Whatever metaphors to use. I just really wanted to explain these things. So right off the bat, immediately what I thought of was you had. Sorry. See, this is why I wish I brought my water up here with me. But right off the bat, you have the director, Matt Reeves, and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I love that movie. I give that like an A plus. Like that's one of my favorite action films. I love that movie. It's really, really good, and it's perfect. Uh, and then War of the Planet of the Apes, I kind of like it, but I kind of don't because it was extremely anticlimactic, and it was just so much worse than what I was expecting. And a big problem with that movie was exactly the problem that this movie has. And I feel like he has not learned the lessons from that movie's failure and that movie not being that good. Like it was a terrible landing. It was very rough, and there was hardly any action in the whole movie. I mean, there was all this advertising about how this is War of the Planet of the Apes, and there's going to be all these battles, and but then in the actual movie, there's just like a couple of skirmishes, and they're just pretty like meaningless battles, and they're very focused and small scale, and most of the movie is spent with this like concentration camp storyline, which is really overly depressing and dark. Uh, and then the villain dies in such an anticlimactic way. What a oh god! I'm starting to want to rant about that movie now, but that movie ended anticlimactic too, and in fact they had this really stupid thing where there was this huge army that shows up to fight and kill the apes, and they look like stormtroopers. And then all of a sudden, a huge avalanche destroys all of them and kills them. And it's like a funny, ironic thing because Caesar, he got shot and he was like really dying, and it was just funny how like the huge army just gets taken out in 2 seconds by an avalanche. Like that was almost like that. See, but I like that though. That was fine, but it was just so anticlimactic. And with this movie, it feels even more anticlimactic. How the movie plays out, like you have the Riddler. You'd expect, and this is a different version of the Riddler too, because this is not the Riddler. This is like a Zodiac killer, serial killer, uh, Instagram terrorist guy. They could have had some sort of a really awesome final confrontation, and instead they just opted for this really stupid, oh, I'll get to it, but the director too, he said something that really was a red flag to me before I even watched the movie. And I'll say this, I the Ben Affleck Batman movie, that was the only DC movie I was looking forward to in these years. Like that was literally the only one. That was all I wanted. I didn't care about Justice League 2. I didn't care about Flash. I didn't care about Aquaman. Well, especially not with that alleged domestic abuser Amber Heard in it. I didn't care about any of that. I just cared about Ben Affleck's Batman movie that he really wanted to make. And the director of this, Matt Reeves, he said that script, he said it, I guess he said it was fine, but he said that it was so action uh, focused. Like it all revolved around actions, and and to me that's like a huge red flag because that's literally every script in existence. Like just because a script has action in it doesn't make it a bad movie. And his that was his criticism, and he decided to throw it in the trash. And to me that's just a huge red flag because it shows that he's full of himself, and he thinks that if I mean, this is Batman, guys. This is Batman. If you don't have action in a Batman film, then you don't have a good Batman film. And this is hardly has any action whatsoever, and the action is terrible. I mean, these fights, and we'll talk about the fights, but that was such a huge, like, oh God, what's this idiot saying? I didn't like the script because it was action oriented. Like, oh God, ooh, what movie are we going into? And so that really soured me. But I was still 7 out of 10. I was still ready to give this movie a chance, and then even go see it in theaters if I liked it. But then right off the bat, immediately it was weird, very weird. You had this. It was very much like Dirty Harry, where the Scorpio, and here's why I mentioned Dirty Harry too, because in that movie, Scorpio was based off of the Zodiac Killer, hence the Scorpio name. Very much based off the Zodiac Killer, and so automatically, this movie, it's reminding me of another movie that has to do with the Zodiac Killer. It's not reminding me of the Riddler of Batman. And so you have the Riddler, quote unquote, and he's spying on the mayor, and he's waiting for, I think, like his wife to leave, and he's spying, and you can hear his breathing, and they're like, ooh, isn't this creepy that you can hear the bad guy's breathing as if that's never been done before. And then you have this hilarious shot where the mayor is watching his own debate. And right off the bat, you got these huge agenda red flags because you have this progressive candidate, and she's like talking about change, and she's talking about like, you've done nothing, you don't do anything. And then he's the white male mayor, and it's like, oh, okay, I see what we're getting into here already. But more importantly, she mentions some sort of a Wayne fund, and right off the bat I knew, why are they mentioning this fund? Why are they focusing in on it, acting like, oh, okay, it's because that is going to be the key to the whole movie. It's going to have something to do with the fund. People are corrupt because they take money out of the fund. I mean, like, what? Like, really? Like, it's that simple. So I figured this whole movie out right in the first like minute or so. Uh, and then they had this really weird thing where the Riddler was standing in the shadows, and it felt like maybe I guess like they're trying to create parallels to him and Batman. That was really bizarre. You know, the Riddler is not Batman. The Batman is not the Riddler. Uh, I mean, just what? Trying to create parallels between Batman and the Riddler is just the stupidest idea I've ever heard. I mean, guys, can you imagine the Riddler from the Arkham game series standing in the shadows like he's like, I don't know, like Michael Myers or something? Like, just. And then he comes out and he bashes the mayor over the head, and then he starts to do the duct tape thing. And then we see the first entry of Batman's diary. And Batman has a diary, you know, because this is 2022 emo femboy Batman. And he's got a diary and he's talking about, like, it's been 2 years and the shadows are calling me because I'm the shadow man and I'm all over the place. And you see this glimpse of him and he looks like a protester or something, and he's looks like an emo protester with this hoodie on and eyeliner, and like, ugh. Like, see, this is the problem. Like, I really like Robert Pattinson as an actor. I was willing to give him a chance. I really like him in the movies that people say that you should like him in. Like, I really like him in Good Time. I really like him in The Lighthouse. I really like him in The Devil All the Time. But you guys all said that in this movie he's not going to do Twilight. You said, you know, oh, get over Twilight. He's gonna be Batman. Well, the thing is that right off the bat, he's Twilight. He's doing Twilight again, and this whole movie is just Twilight. I mean, guys, a month ago I just watched a Twilight movie for a Valentine's Day commentary, and so I would know. And you know, he literally acted exactly like he did in Twilight, and so that's the thing I have a problem with is the fact that you guys acted like he was going to change and that he was going to, you know, be Batman, and he wasn't. He was Twilight. He was Edward Cullen. And to be honest, he did a better job in Twilight Part 2 than this movie. Because in Twilight Part 2, at least he had a presence to him. He does not have a presence in this movie. Well, the only presence is that you can clearly tell that he's Batman. Like, there's all these scenes where people are looking at him as a human and they're wondering, like, oh, is that the Batman? I can kind of recognize him. I've seen that guy before. And, like, you know, what is this? Like, this is just. Uh, oh, 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 oh. But it starts off, and you got this whole montage of, like, of he's, like, he's doing Batman stuff, and there's the gang scene that we saw in the trailer, and it's terrible fighting. I mean, guys, he's just like flailing his arms around, and just people are magically falling down without any effort whatsoever. It's probably some of the worst fighting I have ever seen. I mean, it's not choreographed well. It doesn't look good. It's not it doesn't look like it hurts. I mean, they need to get the people who made Nobody. Remember the bus fight on Nobody from last year? That's the type of fighting I expected to see. And instead, I just got this shitty, wimpy ass fighting with this twig boy flailing his arms around like a weirdo. I mean, he literally just flails his arms around up and down and diagonal and sideways, and then people just fall down. That's literally the whole movie with him. Like it's so bad. It's so bad. And then to top that off, when the last guy who didn't even do anything, he just stands there and doesn't even say anything to him. Like, he doesn't even say, "Are you okay? You need to stop hanging out with these guys." I could just imagine the animated series Batman helping him up and being like, "You need to get out of this life while you still can." I can imagine something like that. But this Batman, this emo, mopey, femboy Batman, he just stands there and stares like a retard. And then, like, but I wanted to, you know what? Because I'm starting to lose. Uh, I'm starting to not remember what happens in the movie because it's just so. There's so much too. Like, just there's an endless amount of stuff to talk about. Because it's a 3 hour movie, so that's why. But I really wanted to bring up my comparison to Monk. Oh yeah, because that's what happens next, is that he's in the crime scene with Gordon, Token Gordon, and he's investigating this death, and all the police are looking at him. Well, I was shocked. I was shocked at how much this movie reminded me of Monk. Season 1, Episode 1, Monk and the Candidate. And I went back and I rewatched the episode and I was stunned. I was like, what in the hell? Like, guys, if you didn't know, Monk has been copied so many times by different people. It's ridiculous. Like, if you go back to the last season, episode 1, and then look at WandaVision, I dare you to tell me that the people who made WandaVision did not look at that episode and that's not where they got their ideas from. Because it's literally WandaVision in that episode. And then they had another episode that was like an A plus episode until the end. And it was all about this lawyer. And he was a very sleazy lawyer, but he was good at doing theatrics. And guess what? A year later, after the show ended, you have Breaking Bad season 2, where they introduced Saul, a character who was exactly like the character from the show, for the most part. And now we have the Batman. And it's literally the Monk pilot episode. I couldn't believe it. Like, it weirds me out. Like, it literally just makes me scratch my head, and it gives me a headache thinking, like, okay, if I'm writing a script, the last thing that I would want to do is to look at other projects and say, how can I make this like that? Like, I will admit, like, if you're doing like a genre movie where, like, let's say you're doing a vampire movie, well, you would want to watch the vampire movies to be inspired. And then, but you wouldn't look at those and reference them like you're doing a sketch of them and like you're adapting those. You would still just do it yourself and not use other people's work because it was so weird. The first episode of Monk had a very dark color palette and it looks very dull, very dark, very procedurally, and it's the exact same look that this movie has, except it's just darker. And yet people want to say it's because it's noir. Like, no. No, it's not. Believe me, I've watched noir movies this year. My two favorite movies of the year so far are both noir movies. I've seen noir. This movie was not noir at all. If you think that this movie is noir, then you need to go watch some noir movies and and just enjoy those and not think about this movie because it like just because it's dark and you can't see anything, that doesn't make it noir. That just makes it trash. We had the same thing with Fargo season 4, where in that show they literally just didn't light anything, and then you had all these stupid fanboys who said it's noir lighting, and it's like just f off. Like that's not an argument. That's not like you have to give specific examples and say why is this because you could say some lighting in this movie is noir, but for the most part, it's just dark and dull and colorless and ugly. I mean, what an ugly Batman movie. I thought that the Nolan movies were ugly. I mean, this movie takes the cake. It is so ugly. You got Zoe Kravitz, and it somehow you make her ugly in this movie. I mean, that's how bad this is. Is it just makes everything ugly. Uh, but with Monk, funnily enough, that episode, which just assume that's what I'm talking about from now on. In that episode, it's all about the assassination of a mayoral candidate, or I mean, a mayor. It's all about, okay, we got to assassinate the mayor with these two guys who are conspiring to do it. What's this movie about? It's all about how at the end they want to assassinate the mayor. And they use the whole flood thing as a way to do that. But there's so many other comparisons too, right down to the fact that remember when I said that this movie felt like it took place in one neighborhood? Well, they literally used like almost all the exact same settings from this Monk episode. Like they had a church with a funeral that gets disrupted. They had a they had sorry, I'm struggling to try to think up of examples right now. There's so many things in my head right now. uh, well, they have the crime scene, and you have Monk walking around the crime scene being criticized and all these police looking at him. It's exactly like this movie. And hilariously enough, it all is because of the one of the campaign guys, and he is taking money out of a fund that has to do with the mayor. And I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? It's the same story where you have the evil characters, corrupt character taking money out of a fund. There's some other comparisons. Like I'm trying not to reach and make too many like wild comparisons as if they are exactly this because they're not exactly the same, but they were the same enough to where I that's all I thought could think about today was how similar they were. It it, it just it was really it's really weird. It gives me a really weird feeling. Like it's like I don't know. Like I bet this movie took from other movies too. Like I bet there's other movies that I haven't seen yet, and this movie copied those movies too. And oh, there's so much to talk about. Well, let's just talk about the obvious. Let's talk about Catwoman. Because Catwoman, with her character, she's introduced and she's already stupid. Because her character dresses up as Catwoman and undresses with all of her windows uncovered. And so Batman can literally just look in there watching her get dressed as Catwoman when she's supposed to be hiding her identity. And then there's this whole thing with her where she goes undercover and, the whole movie, she just makes the same faces, the same expressions. She never really acts at all. She never really does any of that. Like, the whole movie, she's the same. And I thought that, this is supposed to be Catwoman. I'm already not a fan of Catwoman that much because of how they just keep on doing the same old shit with her, making Batman have romance with her. Like, what a stupid idea that is. To have Batman and Catwoman have a romance. Like, I can't think of something stupider than that, uh, to be honest. Like, I'm getting so sick of seeing Batman and Catwoman having a romance. But not only that, like, in this movie in particular, they try to make her look like a good guy. Like, they try to make her look like, oh, I didn't kill anyone. I was just stealing something for my friend and I because our apartment, we're going to get kicked out of our apartment. And, I'm a former prostitute. Uh, I don't kill. And then she kills people. She wants to kill people later in the movie. And uh, but just her character, it's like they wanted you to sympathize with her, and it's like, why? She's supposed to be a villain. Like, why are you making this villain? It's the same thing where they did with Cruella, where they said Cruella loves animals, and Cruella would never kill dogs. She's not that evil, even though she is. And so I really didn't like that. And there's this whole soap opera business where there's this thing she says where she says, uh, I did not have a relationship with him, or something like that. Or Batman is like, what kind of a relationship did you have? And she's like, yeah. And it's weird because Batman just keeps replaying that video over and over and over again, like he's like sitting around moping about this bitch. And it's like, why in the hell is Batman doing this? Like, remember in the Nolan trilogy where he was sleeping with different biatches every night and he was getting with ballerinas on a boat? Remember that they wanted to go see the ballerinas, and then they're like, "Oh shit, they're actually on a on a fucking cruise with Batman." I mean, that was the funniest shit ever, and that is exactly Bruce Wayne. That is so Bruce Wayne. You got none of that in this movie. You got nothing. All you got in this movie with Bruce Wayne is he stands around and he mopes and he stares into space. He doesn't want to go to any meetings. Uh, he's a sad faced loser. He looks like a vampire. He looks like in Twilight. I mean, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And and then you have, let's talk about the Riddler, because the Riddler, aka the Zodiac Killer, he really doesn't act like the Riddler at all. He acts like this serial killer who he he's trying to expose this corruption, and that's another weird thing is that they were almost trying to make you sympathize with the Riddler, and I thought that that was weird too because he the performance that he gave was not of someone that you would want to sympathize with. And yet they had all these parallels to him and Batman, and even at the end, it's revealed the Riddler wanted to work with Batman the whole time, which I thought that is the stupidest fucking Riddler. Ugh. And he has an Instagram account where he's live streaming, and he's got all these followers commenting on his live streams. Really? The Riddler has an Instagram account? Like, I guess you can make the argument he can't get tracked down. They can't track his account. It's fine. It's totally realistic. But in my opinion, I think that the Riddler wouldn't even have the internet at all. I don't think that he would use the internet at all. And the fact that his followers, really what his followers come down to, is that his followers are basically like, they're radicalized young white males like him. And so they have this thing at the end where uh, we see them, all their masks are taken off, and they all look the same. And of course, they're all ready to kill for him and his ideas. And it was really bizarre. The messaging in this movie too. There was all this agenda messaging, and it was like they were trying to really tear down Batman in this movie and tear down his family too. I mean, remember in the Nolan trilogy, and I know that's going to piss off fanboys that I keep on comparing this to the Nolan trilogy. There was this idiot on Twitter who said, just because the new Batman came out doesn't mean that you should be comparing it to the Nolan trilogy. And it's like, yeah, it kind of does. Because they're movies in the same series, they're adapting the same character. You should be comparing everything. Because then you can determine what made that movie good versus this movie. What made this movie bad versus that movie? Like, it makes no sense. Like, oh, we can't compare anything. And all it seems like to me is that it's covering up for the fact that this movie sucks. Like, okay, if we can't compare, like, in my opinion, it's really because it's like, you're just defending it because you know it's bad, and so anyways, what was I talking about with that, and the Riddler and the messaging? Oh, I forgot. I completely forgot. Oh wait, no, with the Nolan trilogy, it took all the way until the third movie for his character to be torn down. They had the thing with Two Face where Two Face, they killed him. Wait a second. Oh, did they kill him? I'm trying to remember. Well, he died, but no. Wait. Oh yeah, it's they covered up the fact that he was a bad guy, and that he turned evil, to keep his image up for the public to have hope. And then also you had the thing with Alfred, and where he didn't show Bruce Wayne the letter that Rachel sent him. And that was in the third movie of the film where that stuff gets exposed and where it really destroys Batman. And in this series, in this movie, they already did that in the first movie. In the first movie, they're saying, oh, his dad was corrupt, his whole family was corrupt. Uh, they had this fund where people could just take from it because they're all corrupt, because they're all quote unquote white privilege assholes. Like, yeah, fuck off, token Catwoman. Uh, and, stuff like that. And then, like, oh yeah, he also had someone killed on accident. But it's like you knew that this movie, the feeling they were trying to give you was that they're tearing down Batman. And why are they tearing down Batman? Because he is a hero. And in this movie, he's not that heroic at all. He hardly ever does anything heroic. Uh, he saves a couple of people a few times, but it's mostly just like quick 2 second things where it's not really a big thing. It's just like, oh yeah, he jumped over there and saved that person really fast, or when that guy's about to get beat up in the train station, oh yeah, he came out really fast to fight those guys really quickly. But it's not really, it doesn't really give you the feeling that he's a hero. In fact, the whole movie just makes you feel like he's selfish, and like he's just doing this all for him, and that it's not really about being a hero. And so this movie was really, in my opinion, trying to make him look like a bad guy. And it was trying to tear down him being a hero. Because let's be honest, in this movie, they sort of made Riddler look like the good guy. in the way that he was exposing everything. He's killing off all these corrupt people. They made Catwoman look like a good guy. And everyone else pretty much was bad. Well, except for Gordon, of course, because he doesn't trust any cops. And that's another thing, is that with Gordon, it was really weird with him because the whole movie, it's practically a buddy cop movie with him and Batman. And it's probably one of the most boring buddy cop movies I've ever seen. And I really didn't like their dynamic. It's like, why? Like, this is not Batman. Like, maybe he would go do something with Gordon one time, but for him to just be running around the city with Gordon, like, that is just so not Batman. And he's really not mysterious in this movie at all. As I said, it's very obvious who this character is. It's very obvious that he is this vigilante character, but he's just so bad. Like, he can't even fly that good. He has this stupid wingsuit where he crashes and burns. Like, it's just so dumb. Like, why do we just have to keep going back to this same old story, this origin story? Like, this is every single time, for some reason, with Batman, we get these different interpretations of his character that don't really have all of the elements to his character. And it's either because of the actor or it's because of the writer. And in this case, it's both. Because he did not have any distinction between him being Batman and Bruce Wayne. And at the same time, the writer didn't really give him that many opportunities to do that. And so that's why this movie was trash. I mean, most of the movie, it's him and Gordon being buddy-buddy, or it's him and Catwoman. And Catwoman, I just hate how they're portraying her as this, like, Robin Hood type of character, in a way, because, she just wants to find her friend. And she's just stealing. She's not killing anyone. She's not doing anything that bad. And they keep on going to the same locations in this movie. And it irritated me because they kept on going to these same locations. And so it made the movie feel like it just took place in one neighborhood. And whereas in previous Batman movies, it really felt like it took place in a city. And it felt like he's going around the city. He's going on rooftops. He's going all over the place. He's going around the world, like in the Dark Knight trilogy. Every single one, he goes around the world somehow. In this, he just, like, walks around a single neighborhood and doesn't really go anywhere else. In fact, even the ending scene of the movie is him and token Catwoman, and they're in a cemetery, and she's like, "You should come with me." And then he's like, "No, I'm just going to stay in this little neighborhood." And he just drives away. And that was a stupid ending, too. I mean, what a anticlimactic. The whole third act was anticlimactic. And it was funny because people have said that they felt like the third act wasn't even written by Matt Reeves. And I actually disagree. I felt like it was entirely written by Matt Reeves. In fact, I felt like it was a reaction to people saying that War for the Planet of the Apes didn't have action in the last act. I felt like he thought that this was a good action-packed finale. That's genuinely what I thought. The way that it was so clunky. It was so thrown together. It felt like, okay, like, this is the finale to a Batman movie? Like, this is just so... Like, they had something good with Falcone getting killed, The Riddler kills him. That was his plan. Then he gets caught because he wants to get caught. And then there's this little nice scene between him and Batman. And after that, it's like, okay, what are we doing now with this stupid plan with like flooding the city? And but you could tell it was like some sort of a symbolism for like rats being flooded. And what's that story about the I can't remember, but it just felt like it was so planned out. Like he thought this is going to be really symbolic. Batman leading these people out of the flooded danger. All those people, with the flare and everything, and it was, I just felt like he was like, this is going to be really good and like really deep and impactful. And it was a huge failure. I mean, it was just so one note and anticlimactic. It's like honestly, who cares? Uh, in my opinion, the best stuff was really. I will say that I liked a few scenes. I did like him and Riddler talking. I thought that was an okay scene. I did like Falcone, John Turturro's character. And see, that's another thing I forgot to bring up is that John Turturro is actually in Monk as Monk's brother. And so I really think that they cast him because they said, oh, yeah, let's get that guy from Monk in here. Let's get someone who is a Monk in the Batman movie. And it's funny because I don't think anyone else has pointed out how similar uh, this was to the Monk pilot episode. I think that I am the first one. And so, I don't know. Like, are the Monk fans going to figure it out? Are they? Because I just started watching it last year. I just watched the whole series last year. Uh, and I felt like it was so weird how close it was. How just it was like, what am I watching? And the funny thing is that if Monk was on this case, he would have solved it like yesterday. Like he would have solved it before the movie even began. And so that made it even worse. The fact that like this case is so elementary, it's so simplistic. The riddles are dumb. They're really dumbed down. It felt like the writers really dumbed down the riddles for the audience. Like, oh, our audience is so stupid. We got to make the riddles really, really simple. And we got to make them really easy to figure out. But then the characters figure them out in 2 seconds, and they don't even give the audience a chance to think. And to me, that's something that really. That's one of the reasons why the Riddler is really good. His character is because the audience gets to participate and they get to really have a chance to think about the riddles and think. Like in the Arkham games, where you go in these areas, these environments, and they have a riddle on the top of the screen, and you're able to just think about that as long as you need to solve the riddle. Uh, well, in this movie, they just quickly solve the riddles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they are really easy, but it's like, come on, really? And I'm starting to not care anymore, but I really wanted to do this. And then, of course, Falcone, his character, he was really good. He was very mysterious. He was very classy. He was not like a typical mobster character where he's a hothead. He wasn't that much of a hothead until he got his life threatened. So I really liked his character, and I thought that he could have been actually a perfect villain for the movie. And also, another comparison to Monk is that it's the same type of thing where Monk is doing everything he's doing because of his wife dying. but they don't know who did it. And he's still investigating. And this, it's all about his parents, and he's still investigating and trying to figure it out. And they have all these stupid hints in the movie, like, oh, could it have been a hit put out on his parents? Like what? Who? No, it was just a random guy uh, in the comics, and so that felt really similar. It was so see, there are so many similarities that you could say, like, yeah, this was really similar. It was really ridiculous, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, and then the Penguin, I kind of like the Penguin. I mean, he looked good. He had a nice prosthetic, but he really didn't act much like the Penguin. He didn't really. His voice was very generic. It was just a very general, mean guy voice. It really wasn't a penguin type. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a sinister, scary voice. It was just like a normal guy voice. Uh, whereas, like, just thinking about Danny DeVito and Batman Returns, thinking about his penguin, you can just tell the difference between the two. And that was something that this movie really tried to do that was a big failure. Was they tried to make this movie ultra realistic, which whenever you do that with these comic book movies, it always has the opposite effect. It always is like, okay, this is a comic book movie. It's comic book characters. It's superheroes. It's supervillains. Why are you trying to make this like a real life, realistic? Like, you don't have to do it that much. They overdid it. In the Nolan trilogy, it was the perfect balance between realism and comic book world. But there were so many things in this movie where they just purposefully went over the top, making everything like just grounded and gritty, and it did not work. So yeah, like, I pretty much have a problem with every single scene of the movie, no matter what. And it just, and then of course they had the stupid Joker scene near the end, and the reason why that scene was particularly stupid was, it's like, okay, we just did a movie with the Riddler. Okay. Oh no, now we're going to have to do the Joker again? Or we're going to have to, have the Penguin again? Like, oh, like, I thought we would have another villain who hasn't really been done before that well. I mean, Jim Carrey did the Riddler. Honestly, Jim Carrey's Riddler was better than this Riddler. He acted more like the Riddler. He was more like the Riddler than this Riddler. This Riddler was just like Scorpio from Dirty Harry. And it's funny too, because Scorpio actually has that same type of outfit in Dirty Harry at certain points, where he has like a ski mask on. And so it really reminded me of that too. And so I think that besides the fact that they were inspired, I mean, obviously it's all inspired from the Zodiac Killer. And that's really what the Riddler was. And that's not how the Riddler should be. He should be like in the Arkham games. If you want to see the Riddler done right, go play the Arkham games. So yeah, I really hated this movie. It is definitely the worst comic book movie I've ever seen. It's the worst Batman movie I've ever seen. And the more and more I think about it, just the more and more that I find wrong with it. It does not speak Batman at all. Like that thing with the white privileged asshole line. That's not something Catwoman would say. That's something that the writer wants to say. And the only time you really see dialogue like that is in a fan film. In fan films, you understand because the people making them, they're not professional writers. They're just, it's their take on everything. And so it'll have a lot of their personalities inserted into these movies, these fan movies, including cringy lines of dialogue that, they stick out like a sore thumb. And that is one that sticks out, and it feels like that was a line from a fan film. That is not something that Catwoman would say, ever. Ever, ever, ever. I mean, what a stupid, dumbass, racist line that was. And so, uh, this whole movie just felt like they did everything they could to not make this the Batman. They did everything they could to not do the stories, not do the characters, just like with a fan film, where fan films, they're very different from uh, the real thing. They're very out there. They have all these wild things happen that would never be acceptable in the official canon. And that's what this movie felt like. It felt like a Batman fan film. And I struggle to think that this was good to get over Ben Affleck's Batman movie. Like, was Ben Affleck's Batman movie, was that really bad that it's even worse than this? I don't think so. Like, I think Ben Affleck's Batman movie would have been fantastic. And it's too bad that they couldn't have made that. It just, ugh. And then we didn't even talk about with Alfred, the way that, also, Alfred kept that secret. We already revealed that in the first film, and it's already this big drama in the first film. There's so much stuff that happens in this movie that, like, it feels like it's 3 movies worth of material shoved into one shitty story. Like, see, there's all this stuff that I haven't even talked about. Uh, because there's just too much. So, anyways, uh, please like this video, comment, and tell me uh, if you could see the similarity to Monk, because it was really bad. Like, I was considering taking footage of Monk and then putting that stupid Nirvana song under it and then saying, like, oh, look, this is the Batman Monk edition. And I was considering just doing that as the video because of how similar it was to this movie. And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more movie reviews like this. Bye, everybody. See you soon.